This video is about the theory that pyramids are surveyors' targets for conducting planetary surveying. When I say pyramids, I am also referring to temples like Angkor Wat and a lot of the Hindu temples. The basic outline of the theory is that the sun's rays were used to measure the distance between the Earth and the sun from these structures. Surveyors use total stations that send a laser to a reflector prism which is reflected back to the source to measure the distance. To comprehend the theory, imagine our sun is looking through a total station to the center point of the top of the pyramids when directly overhead. This was done in order to maintain correct distances. When a surveyor is sighting a target, the view is obscured to a small window as the subject is zoomed in on. The purpose of all the line work around the perimeter of the target is to draw the viewer's eye to the center point. So here, for example, is Angkor Wat being centered on the target. What would probably have been at the center point was a retroreflector prism which sends the signal back to the viewer. The implication that the center point is being so strongly viewed at would imply that there was something important directly at the center point. And look at that at Angkor Wat, something very interesting. The main central tower of Angkor Wat has a tunnel going straight down the center into an underground chamber. Some people claim the purpose of this was to harvest solar energy, but I can assure you it was for planetary surveying. The distance between the Earth and the Sun was being measured, but also the cardinal directions of north, south, west and east were also being checked. That is, the Earth's axis and alignment relative to the Sun's axis. We know this because the structure of Angkor Wat is aligned with the cardinal directions. You may think this is an absurd theory, however, remember the expression, any sufficiently advanced enough technology is indistinguishable from magic. A mobile phone or a nuclear bomb would look like magic to ancient man, yet it is constructed from knowledge of science and physics, and that was unconceivable a long time ago. Something that seems impossibly complex is actually totally possible given enough advancements. These opinions were formed looking at evidence presented in such places as Karnak, Egypt, where the inner sanctum of a large temple structure was illuminated by a beam of sunlight only on the winter solstice. Karnak is a massive structure and an incredibly large amount of work was put into constructing it, all revolving around a beam of sunlight hitting and illuminating an inner sanctum on the winter solstice. For what purpose? Just ceremonial? Just as a calendar? No. It is quite clear that the purpose of these structures revolves around the sun and the Earth's trajectory in relationship to each other. So it is no stretch of the imagination to infer that there was a similar alignment from the sun to the top of the tip of the Giza's pyramids. Archaeoastronomy was basically the default purpose for practically all of these ancient structures. This theory calls for an open-mindedness in relation to these structures and a respect for the ancient peoples who built them, giving them credibility that they did not just build pointless things for no reason, but were extremely wise in their activities, engaging in building projects we can barely discern the motives and purposes of. These ancient peoples were interacting with the gods, or the ancient aliens as some people like to call them. It was a symbiotic relationship between the humans and the gods. The humans were required to build the physical structures of the pyramids, however it was the gods that conducted the actual surveying from these structures. The builders of Angkor Wat carved depictions of Vishnu all over the structure. They are telling you who they were interacting with, and I trust the opinions of those who built such magnificent structures more than most godless atheist experts who have not built any such structures. When the Egyptians depict gods such as Ra, do you disbelieve their accounts and insult them and their legacy by calling them liars? It's great that we have such intact marvels such as Angkor Wat that we can still perceive their purpose through the decay of time. There are many similarities between Angkor Wat and Giza. They both align to the north, south, west and east cardinal directions. They both have a center point to which the eye is drawn to when looking at them from above. One can therefore pretty safely conclude they both had reflector prisms similar to what surveyors use at their center point. A lot of people have asked what was at the top of the Giza pyramids. It's an interesting question. They're basically giant arrows pointing to this top point. It was an extremely complex, multifaceted prism that also had mirrors that reflected the surveying laser off in the cardinal directions. All the surveying would have probably been done simultaneously at the equinoxes and the solstices. In the same way that if a photographer is taking a photo of a moving object, the shutter speed is fast so as not to get a blurry photo. The Earth is a moving target relative to the Sun's position, so the moment of survey reading would have been very brief and precise. The fact that a lot of the pyramids and temples align to the cardinal directions is strong proof that the Earth's axis was of primary concern of these structures. When a surveyor puts a control point target on a bridge pylon, they place it horizontally. Why? Because it is of extreme relevance to the task they are carrying out. Pyramids align to the cardinal directions because the Earth's axis is extremely irrelevant to their purpose. The notion of the Sun having a total station is a metaphor for what was going on. People could use telepathy and to communicate, but we all use mobile phones instead to communicate. It's the same thing. It's a language reference system to communicate an idea and a spirit of the nature of the pyramids and what was going on. I have obsessively studied pyramids and temples for 25 years. I have watched every video available on the subject. There are no theories about these structures that I haven't heard. Tesla power plant theory, water pump, all nonsense. Looking at all the alignments that correspond with the planets, it's so obvious to the open-minded individual that they are surveyors' targets for conducting planetary surveying. Once you realise they weren't just calendars marking the equinoxes and the solstices, so people would know when to plant their food crops, it was much more profound than that. The amount of effort put into creating these structures is a strong indication that their importance is quite large. If people just wanted to build structures that would inform them of what season it was so they would know when to plant their food crops, they could easily build smaller structures that would sufficiently fulfill this purpose. People need to be open-minded enough to be capable of conceiving that the Earth's rotation and alignment with the Sun is a pliable momentum and can be changed. It can and is alterable by aligning with the higher forces or the gods. These ancient peoples believed they were active co-creators of this world.
It's like, yes! True!
It is not much of a stretch of the imagination to infer they were measuring distances between planets, and if they were measuring these distances, that means they can alter those distances. Therefore, pyramids keep our planet Earth in alignment with the Sun, which allows the Earth the capacity to bear life. The profound realization, it is true, pyramids are surveyors' targets for conducting planetary surveying.
And then I realized, like I was shot with a diamond bullet right through my forehead. And I thought, my God, the genius of that, the genius, the will to do that. Perfect, genuine, complete, crystalline, pure. And then I realized they were stronger than me.
There's a big machine in the sky. Some kind of
Quart of rum.
electric snake coming straight at us.
It was right in everyone's face. Tyler and I just made it visible. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue. Tyler and I just gave it a name.
Surveyors' targets.
As you awaken to your history, you will begin to open your ancient eyes. These are the eyes of Horus, which see not through the eyes of a human being, but from the point of view of a god. They see the connectedness and purpose of all things, for the ancient eyes are able to see into many realities and to connect the whole picture, the whole history. All of this is to be felt. Allow your brain cells to click into being without your rational conscious mind wanting to define things down to the most minute detail. This experience involves raising a feeling inside yourself, and then one day, at one moment, in one afternoon, having an overwhelming sense of knowing. Having a composition of 1,000 pages long come alive in 5 seconds of divine ecstasy.
It was right in everyone's face. Tyler and I just made it visible. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue. Tyler and I just gave it a name.
Surveyors' targets.
Isn't it amazing? I know that I'm right. Of course, I kept that opinion to myself because I knew I'd be laughed at for such a crazy theory. But seeing those dinosaurs and all those other strange creatures convinced me that I was right.
I perceived the earth to be female and the sun to be male. It was surveying and the measuring of distances that was going on. However, it was kind of a sexual energy in a way. Just as a man and a woman have a magnetic attraction towards each other to perpetuate the species, so too it was a similar force that was holding the earth and the sun in the correct alignment. When a man and a woman make love, they are in close proximity to each other. So too it is with the earth and the sun, that they are the correct distance from each other to perpetuate life on the planet. So in a way, pyramids are the sexual organs of the planet. They are very sacred places, and this is why we see so much sexual imagery at places like Angkor Wat. The importance of these structures cannot be understated. Here we see a video of the planets in rotation around our sun. Notice the way the earth trails in the wake of the sun, kind of like a water skier trailing behind a boat. The path the earth takes when it's behind the sun forms an oval-like shape. When the earth is directly behind the sun, it's the equinox, and when it leans out to the sides, that's the solstices. A good way of demonstrating this effect is to show the earth as a pendulum. The hand that is holding the pendulum represents the sun. The earth is water skiing behind the sun. Notice that the hand holding the pendulum has to wobble slightly in order to get the pendulum to swing correctly. If the hand wobbles too much, it causes the pendulum to swing out too widely. Here we see the sun's transit around our Milky Way galaxy. The transit is reflected in the zodiac signs which are visible from the Earth. The thing to note here is that the Earth gives these little spiral rotations, which obviously determine how and what degree the Earth rotates out away from the perimeter of the sun. These animations are not to scale, but you can see the sun gives a little spiral wobble as it goes along its path. The intensity of which the sun does these spiral rotations determines the degree to which the Earth leans away from the sun's trail. We can conclude that the sun's path is to a degree also determined by the surveying done from the pyramids. The thing to realize is that the amount that the sun moves determines the Earth's trajectory, so that means the Earth is in control of the sun's rotation. We can see that the shafts of the Giza pyramid were taking survey readings from star systems beyond our Milky Way galaxy. This would indicate that our Milky Way's axis is also being determined by the surveying that was conducted from the pyramids. Our Milky Way galaxy is probably also moving along a path, and its trajectory is probably also determined from the surveying that was conducted.
For instance, the area over 13 acres was leveled within 7/8 of an inch. That's about the thickness of a thumbnail.
When a builder builds a wall, they level the footings to keep the job aligned with the horizon. When a surveyor sets up a total station, they level the tripod horizontally above the control point. Why? Because this information is essential in accurately measuring the relevant distances of the job. The Giza Plateau was leveled before the pyramids were built. This is further evidence that the pyramids are surveyors' targets for conducting planetary surveying. These are regular survey target control points sighted from a total station or a theodolite when placed on train tracks, bridge pylons and dam walls. Their purpose is to identify undesired movement in the structure. Recently, people have started using drones to conduct surveying. Total stations cannot yet be mounted on drones, so regular cameras are used to measure the control points. Initially, control points were just spray painted on the ground or some sort of makeshift targeting information was used, but then commercially available drone control points came onto the market. Notice how as survey targets are viewed from further away and they get larger and start to be more closely resemble the Giza pyramids viewed from above. This is further evidence to the validity of the pyramids being surveyors' targets.
Not only is Angkor Wat designed with grandness and originality, it was also built in alignment with the heavens. The original name of Angkor Wat was Paramavishnu Loka, which means the sacred world of Lord Vishnu. And the architect made sure he aligned this temple with the heavenly bodies. Every year on a specific day, tens of thousands of tourists from around the world come to the city. This day is called the equinox, where the daytime is exactly equal to the nighttime. All the tourists wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and rush to the temple to see the sunrise. Why? Because this is how the sun rises when you see it from the entrance, and this happens only on this day. How could they have calculated and built it with this incredible astronomical precision? But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The temple is built with so many details about astronomy, we can write an entire book about it. Who depends on the sun in our solar system? The planets, of course. The entire temple was built as a giant symbol of cosmology. Originally, it had a total of 12 towers, symbolizing the 12 signs of zodiac, but they were destroyed by the people who came later. This is why some of the towers have been flattened. This is the level of quality of the original ancient builders. One thing is clear, what we hear from historians is not the full picture. The planets, of course, aligned perfectly. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The temple is built with so many details about astronomy, we can write an entire book about it, aligned perfectly. The entire temple was built as a giant symbol of cosmology, aligned perfectly. It was also built in alignment with the heavens, aligned perfectly. Angkor Wat, the planets aligned perfectly, of course.
This is a target for a ground control point. And this is a target for a ground control point. And this is a target for a ground control point. We talk a lot about control when we're doing drone survey.
And the architect made sure he aligned this temple with the heavenly bodies, aligned perfectly, of course. Calculated and built it with this incredible astronomical precision, aligned perfectly, of course. Originally, it had a total of 12 towers, symbolizing the 12 signs of zodiac, aligned perfectly, of course. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The temple is built with so many details about astronomy, we can write an entire book about it. The entire temple was built as a giant symbol of cosmology. Originally, it had a total of 12 towers, symbolizing the 12 signs of zodiac, but they were destroyed by the people who came later. This is why some of the towers have been flattened. This is the level of quality of the original ancient builders. One thing is clear, what we hear from historians is not the full picture. The planets, of course, aligned perfectly. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The temple is built with so many details about astronomy, we can write an entire book about it, aligned perfectly. The entire temple was built as a giant symbol of cosmology, aligned perfectly. It was also built in alignment with the heavens, aligned perfectly. Angkor Wat, the planets aligned perfectly, of course.
This is a target for a ground control point. And this is a target for a ground control point. And this is a target for a ground control point. We talk a lot about control when we're doing drone survey.
The pyramid is not built with 4 sides, but with 8 sides in a concave apothem. The pyramid is oriented to the north with an error of 0.05 degrees.
Giza Plateau, Egypt. The Great Pyramid is aligned to within 3/60th of a degree of north, a more accurate alignment than any other structure on Earth.
When you look at the Great Pyramid's alignment, it's aligned very, very close to true north. Even more interesting is to think about tracking back in time, because the Earth's axis has been shifting slowly. It's what we call precesses. And so if there's been a shift in that alignment, it could be that it was even more accurately aligned to north in the past when they built it.
Why is it, for all of their precise alignments and advanced building designs and techniques, that so many of the world's ancient sites fail to align with true north? Might the answer be that at one point in time they did? Might it be the locations of the poles has changed over the course of history? This also resulted in a change of location for the pole in the north, which Hapgood further suggested had resided in several different locations during the course of prehistory. Researcher and scientist Mark Colotto would build upon Hapgood's research during his own work, examining many of the ancient megalithic sites, and his ultimate realization that a great many of them failed to align with the North Pole. This went, as we have mentioned, against every aspect of their design, planning, and construction. Colotto returned to the theory put forward by Hapgood that the North Pole had shifted on at least 3 previous occasions in the last 100,000 years. This meant that the North Pole had been in 3 very different locations on the planet, and Carlotto began to suspect that these former locations would match these ancient sites exactly. When he projected directly north from these ancient buildings, he found that was very much the case. For example, when he did this with the pyramids at Teotihuacan in Mexico, he arrived at a point where Hapgood had suggested the North Pole had been around 10,000 BC, Hudson Bay. This meant that if the pyramids at Teotihuacan had meant to have been aligned with the true north, which they almost certainly were, then the only time this was possible was 12,000 years ago, meaning the site is much older than mainstream history currently accepts. Around 50,000 years ago, at least according to Hapgood's research, the North Pole had been in what we know as Greenland today. Amazingly, several ancient sites true north align exactly with this location, meaning they would be at least 50,000 years old. These sites include the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek in Lebanon, the Western Wall in Jerusalem, and the Parthenon in Athens in Greece. Even more remarkable, when Carlotto projected true north of the 6 monoliths of Ollanta Tambo in Peru, he arrived at a point at the Bering Sea that Hapgood claimed had been the location of the North Pole a staggering 100,000 years ago. These ruins are some of the best preserved in the entire Inca Empire, and if these projections are accurate, they would be tens of thousands of years older than official views state. Of course, if there was any accuracy to these assertions, and there is every reason to think there is, then it pushes back the timeline of human civilizations by tens of thousands of years, perhaps even longer. Might it be that these colossal megalithic sites, some of which appear to go back as far as 100,000 years, are signs of a one-time global civilization?
These shots are mutually consistent. They cluster tightly around one another, but not around the bullseye. We could say they are precise or have good precision. These shots evenly surround the bullseye, so we could say they are accurate or have good accuracy. Now these are precise and accurate. Both precision and accuracy are important for geodetic surveying. The aim is to get measurements that average as close as possible to the truth, and to do so in a way that's repeatable, so you can confidently compare them to any future measurements. One way to verify your measurements is to compare them to a known position, such as one accessed through the National Spatial Reference System in the United States. The NSRS is established by the federal government using the most accurate surveying methods possible in order to provide known starting points which act as truth for surveyors and mapmakers. In geodetic surveying, precision refers to how close your repeated measurements come to agreeing with each other. Good surveying procedures contribute to precise measurements. However, just because something is repeatable does not make it accurate. Accuracy describes how well measurements of the same thing average to the truth. Consistently using an incorrect tripod height in a series of measurements may result in very precise but nonetheless inaccurate measurements. Verifying that your measurements yield final coordinates that agree with a known reference system such as the NSRS enables you to evaluate their accuracy. The NSRS is the most up-to-date version of positional truth available in the United States. By tying into it, you inherently gain the built-in accuracy of that system. And by carefully following proper surveying procedures, you increase your chances of repeatable results, which promotes better precision. With both, you'll be right on target.
Findings began to emerge which showed that Angkor Wat had been constructed with shockingly detailed astronomical and cosmological considerations. To begin, visitors realized that if they were standing at the entrance to the complex, the sun would rise perfectly over the central Lotus Bud Tower on the equinox. But indeed, it went much further than that. Perhaps the most famous piece of art in the entire Angkor Wat complex is an enormous 160-foot-long carving which depicts the Hindu story of the churning of the ocean of milk from the Mahabharata. In the carving, there are 88 gods and 91 demons, all life-sized, pulling at a rope attached to a central churning pivot, with Vishnu sitting in the center. On its own, it is an amazing piece of art. But archaeologists like Eleanor Monica have pointed out that the carving and its placement within the complex were not an accident. Rather, the carving was situated to act as a sort of giant calendar, counting the days between winter and summer solstices. The churning pivot in the middle of the carving, where Vishnu sits, represents the spring equinox, while 91 demons to one side represent the 91 days from equinox to winter solstice, and the 88 gods on the other represent the 88 days from equinox to summer solstice. As the sun moved across it, the carving would effectively count the days of the year. Similar to what they did with Hindu cosmology, the builders of Angkor Wat also inserted references to the movements of the sun and moon directly into the measurements of the complex. Consider the central tower's topmost elevation has external axial dimensions of 189 cubits east-west and 176.37 cubits north-south. Add these two numbers together and you get 365.37, almost the exact length of a solar year. Moreover, the central tower of Angkor Wat has 9 inner chambers, each with a total dimension of 27 cubits in the north-south direction and 28 cubits east-west. Why is this important? Because the moon's orbit takes 27 days, during which time it will appear to move through 27 successive regions of the sky. In Hindu cosmology, these regions are called lunar mansions, and depending on context, there can be either 27 or 28. In other words, while the top of the central tower reflects the orbit of the sun, the chambers beneath reflect the orbit of the moon. Put simply, between cosmological and astronomical implications, the entire Angkor Wat complex was built to be an expression of the greater celestial order. While many ancient sites have similar characteristics, rarely are so many seen in one place with such detail. Was the Khmer Empire really this far ahead of what historians imagined was possible? There is another thing, one final detail about Angkor Wat's alignment, which must be mentioned. It has been shown that all the buildings in the Angkor Wat complex are perfectly aligned to the 4 cardinal points on the compass with a GPS level of precision. If Angkor Wat was built by the Khmer Empire some 900 years ago, how could this have been possible? No compass in existence at that time would have allowed for such a level of precision. The detailed astronomical and cosmological precision in design and layout. There was this carving to the sun god Surya, the personification of the sun in Hinduism. Below Surya, in the carving, are 9 figures representing the 9 planets of our solar system, including Pluto, and their orbit around the sun. It is a beautiful work of art. Where did they get all this advanced knowledge of building and hydraulics, of astronomy? In 1934, a team of archaeologists led by Jean Comé were conducting research in the main chamber of the central tower of Angkor Wat when they came across a well set into the foundation beneath a large statue of the Buddha. The statue was not an original build, but had been added by generations of Khmers after their empire converted to Buddhism, and it appeared to have been built to intentionally obscure the well. But why? Comé and his team slowly began to remove the centuries of debris which had filled the well, discovering as they did that it sunk far deeper into the ground than they'd imagined. At a depth of 50 feet, they ran into an underground water table which flooded the shaft, but they brought in water pumps and continued to excavate. They were glad they did when finally, at a depth just over 70 feet, they discovered a broken stone box blocking their path, with a strange circular cutout in the top. Within this cutout, they found 65 grams of gold leaf. What could this be, researchers wondered? Curious as it was, Comé and his team did not pursue the question any further. Instead, they completed their work and returned to Europe without recording any further details, while the box itself was mysteriously lost. As questions about the secrets of Angkor Wat began to emerge in modern times, some returned to look at the work of Comé more closely, asking questions and putting pieces together. At the top of the central tower of Angkor Wat, there is a hole which lets the sun shine through. Some have suggested that the process of the sun shining through the hole, down the shaft, and onto the box could have been part of some sort of solar energy device, the sun's rays interacting with the mysterious box to create and store energy. While at first the theory seemed far-fetched, its advocates pointed to an ancient account of Angkor Wat written long before Henri Mu, which appeared to provide evidence of how such a solar energy system could have worked. Within this account, something incredible is mentioned. As Joe wrote, in the center of the capital is a gold tower, flanked by 20 or so stone towers and 100 or so stone chambers. According to Joe, the central lotus bud tower of Angkor Wat was made of or covered in gold. This jumped out to those speculating about a solar energy device at ancient Angkor. If there was some sort of solar energy device buried within the central tower of Angkor Wat, then there must have been a way to access this energy. Gold is one of the most electrically conductive materials on Earth. If, as Joe suggests, the central tower was originally covered in gold, could this have to do with a projection of energy? Theories of an ancient electrical Angkor were only taken further in 2015, once again thanks to the LiDAR research of Damien Evans and Roland Fletcher. That year, it was revealed that beneath the grounds of the Angkor Wat complex were sprawling structures forming the shape of a giant spiral, some 5,000 feet long. As findings were compiled, Evans and Fletcher were dumbfounded. The giant spiral was unlike anything they'd ever seen before, and they had no idea what it could be. Fletcher called it the most striking discovery associated with Angkor Wat to date. While in their report, the two men wrote, "The huge, unique, and problematic structure of the rectilinear spirals has never previously been recognized or even predicted or supposed, and still defies explanation." Look closely at these spirals. Do they not look strangely electrical? Some are already asserting that these spirals must have been part of an ancient energy system, acting as some sort of power grid, storing and distributing energy. As more becomes known about the spirals in coming years, might they provide the proof of an ancient electrical Angkor? These are the types of questions which lead many to believe that the mystery of Angkor Wat might go much further than mainstream science is currently willing to accept, much further even than anyone imagined. Was Angkor Wat really built by the Khmer Empire 900 years ago? Or is it possible that the Khmers only discovered and used it? That in fact it was built long before them by some other advanced ancient builders? Constructed by a people with astonishing building skills and precise astronomical knowledge. But maybe it goes further than that.
The main temple, which is Shiva temple, has a main shaft, also called Prithvi, that goes 5.7 meters deep. At the bottom of the shaft is a cascade. If this is just a pile of stones in pyramid shape, mainstream would have called this a tomb. For such complex projects that requires millions of chisels, no one knows why they need to dig a shaft into the ground and place a stone box. If this is so important, Buddhists and Hindus will definitely still be digging into the ground and putting a stone box simply for the sake of tradition, even if they don't know why. Sewu Temple is only less than 2 hours from the world-famous Borobudur Temple. This temple is believed to have been built by Rakai Panangkaran at the end of 8th century. His Mahayana Buddhist temple is believed to have been completed by Raja Indra. Some scholars say it was probably completed by Rakai Pikatan. In reality, no one knows for sure. Even though Borobudur Temple is the largest temple in Indonesia, the base is smaller than Sewu Temple. In terms of area size, Sewu Temple is much larger. The amount of stones stacked into magnificent structures are probably the same. Sewu Temple layout looks like a square, but is actually rectangular in shape. At 185 meters by 165 meters, it is the largest in Prambanan. The temple faces 4 cardinal points. It is strange to me that for such an enormous project, the mainstream version of who built Sewu Temple remains debatable. There are 4 entrances to Sewu Temple, where 2 Dwarapala guards facing each other. There is an interesting astronomical fact about this temple. The temple is facing east and sun rises every morning facing the entrance at different angle. But it is special on October 12th and March 1st, where the sun will pass above the main temple. These 2 days are special because they are zenithal passages. It is an incredible astronomical knowledge which mainstream says ancient Javanese are highly knowledgeable in astronomy. Here is an interesting fact. From October 12th to December 21st are 71 days. From December 21st to March 1st are 71 days. These astronomical precisions built into a temple layout is not something primitive civilization would need. There are 72 Pawara temples surrounding the main temple. If this is not a coincidence, that means Sewu Temple is a calendar with astronomical purpose. Here is another interesting fact. From June 21st to October 12th are 113 days. From March 1st to June 21st are 113 days. This astronomical precision cannot be a coincidence even if Javanese actually knows how to make polygonal stones from bedrock. There are 224 ancillary temples in total, and if you divide that in half, there are 112 on each side. We can debate till the cow comes home whether to accept the margin of error by one temple. But if you say the ancient Javanese built this, then the next logical question is why they need to know all this. This interesting research by Amelia Sparavigna proves that this is a very advanced knowledge. The local Javanese were not in possession of such knowledge. If they did possess this knowledge, NASA would have been working for Javanese today. To the east, there is a megalithic temple called Gana Temple, and to the south, there is another megalithic temple called Bubra Temple. Since there is a south temple and an east temple, there must be a north temple and a west temple. I will end here for now with 4 things for you to think about Cebu Temple. It has a layout like Chichen Itza in Mexico. It has significant timing of 71 days zenithal passages. It has 4 small temples and 4 cardinal points, and it has to do with solstice. All this made possible by astronomically highly advanced ancient Javanese. When rediscovered, Cebu Temple was nothing but a pile of rubble. It took almost 100 years to get to this point in reconstruction effort. Earthquakes helped to loosen the mega blocks, making pillages and lootings easier. The temples are also astronomically aligned to have certain impact on solstice and equinox. In terms of temple layout, there isn't much difference to me. 4 stairs on each side and a center that looks like an energy point is very much the main theme that we have yet to understand. On the same scale from Google Maps, you can see that the base of Chichen Itza pyramid can fit into Cebu Temple between the first and second row of Pewara temples. Thanks to earthquakes, looters, and local recyclers, we are able to see the center of the foundation. What we have is a rectangular hole. This is such a weird coincidence because it looks like megalithic pyramids in Egypt, which are tombs, but in Indonesia, they are temples. When you look at these 2 monuments, you would normally think this is the same place or the same culture or the same civilization. It sounds logical when you don't see the big picture. It has astronomical alignments for 2 zenithal passages that coincide with the number of Pewara temples and ancillary temples. It has architectural structure just like a typical megalithic pyramid around the world. It has a serpent with its head at the bottom with an open mouth and a tongue sticking out. We have a floor plan that is like Pyramid of Chichen Itza in Mexico.
At sunrise in the ancient city of Tsibilchaltun, the sun shines through the main portal, transforming the building into the shining face of the sun. In our tropical homelands, the sun can be seen directly overhead twice a year, marking an important event that astronomers call the zenith passage. When the sun is at the zenith, the shadows of vertical objects disappear. The zenith passage was tracked by using solar alignments with buildings and other structures in ancient Maya cities. At Uxmal, the zenith passage can be observed by watching the shadows of the vertical monuments disappear at midday. At Chichen Itza, on the day of the zenith passage, the sun sets behind the great ball court in precise alignment with the Chacmol statue. The opposite of the zenith is a nadir passage of the sun, when the sun is directly underneath us at midnight. This astronomical event was also known to our ancestors. In Palenque, the nadir passage is marked by the alignment of architectural features with the sun at sunrise and sunset on that specific day. In the land of the oldest Maya cities, the sun is at the nadir, or directly underneath, in early November.
Choosing to build the pyramids in alignment with cardinal directions in mind means one thing. The Egyptians had a thorough knowledge of astronomy and placed a great deal of importance on it, almost as if they were worshipping the stars themselves. The shafts of the Great Pyramid seem to be pointing to something in the sky, something of major importance to its designers. In 1964, Virginia Trimble, a professor of astronomy at Maryland University, discovered that the southern shaft protruding from the king's chamber aligned precisely with the stars of Orion's belt. A coincidence? When the shafts in the Queen's chamber were discovered, Robert Bauval calculated that the trajectory of the southern shaft lined up precisely with the star Sirius. South of Egypt, in the African Horn region, another series of changes took place every summer. With the increased heat brought upon by the summer solstice, the Ethiopian highlands would commence its annual monsoon season, bringing in a period of 90 days of rain that would last from June until mid-September. The intense heat of the sun would also melt massive amounts of snow in the mountainous regions, sending torrents of water into the Nile River each year. It was the sun that was directly responsible for this phenomenon, but in the eyes of the pyramid builders, who had only the night sky to guide them, it was the work of Isis herself. For this reason, Sirius and the 3 stars of Orion's belt were of foremost importance to the designers of the pyramids. They were aware of the meter unit, which would mean that they must have measured the planet. But this monument is supposed to be a tomb. What is the purpose of all these mathematical formulae? Why would the corpse of a dead king be concerned with precise coordinates, cardinal directions, and astronomical alignments? From our point of view, in the year 2020, a period of 8,000 years seems unfathomable. If a message were to be passed down from generation to generation over the course of centuries, or in this case millennia, it would have to be something constant, measurable and cyclical, much like the Earth's rotation and revolution around the Sun, which has remained unchanged since the beginning of time. There is a third movement associated with the Earth's revolution around the Sun that is key to understanding the level of sophistication of Egyptian astronomy. The Earth does not revolve around the Sun in a perfectly straight manner. It is tilted slightly enough to cause a wobble, just as a spinning top wobbles to one side after losing its center of gravity. This wobble produces a shift in the Earth's axis that changes by 1 degree every 72 years. This is known as axial precession, and is responsible for the changing positions of stars in the sky from the Earth's point of view. In other words, the stars appear to shift over the course of generations due to this slight wobble in the Earth's axis. Earth's current pole star Polaris will inevitably change as the Earth completes its precessional cycle. Just one cycle spans 25,000 years. The visible constellations in the sky, therefore, will appear to change, and so will the positions of the vernal and autumnal equinox. This phenomenon is known as the precession of the equinoxes. The spring equinox will occur within each of the 12 signs of the zodiac throughout this 25,000-year period, spending a period of roughly 2,100 years in each. These periods are known as zodiacal ages. Given that the pyramids align to the belt of Orion precisely in 10,500 BC, 8,000 years before they were built, means one of two things. Either this was a total stroke of unintended luck by the designers of the pyramids, or this was the work of a highly sophisticated civilization with a thorough understanding of precession that used the pyramids as a means of tracking the movement of the stars. If we accept the writings of ancient Egypt word for word, the Gizeh Acropolis appears to be a stellar complex meant to establish a bond between the Earth and the sky.
Philip Lawson was the originator and the creator of the theory that pyramids are surveyors' targets. Remember to like and subscribe my video.
It wasn't man who sent me on this course, Doctor. It was God who selected me.
God selected you?
In the meantime, I want you to carry on with the dreary, normal things you normal people do, and I will get back to you.